Continue reading Bhagavad Gita as it is by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Chapter 11, Text 51. Arjuna Uvacha Dristavedam Manusam Rupam Tava Shomyam Janardana Idaninam Asmi Samriddha Sacheta Prakritim Gata. When Arjuna thus saw Krishna in his original form, he said, O Janardan, seeing this human-like form so very beautiful, I am now composed in mind, and I am restored to my original nature. Here the words Manusam Rupam clearly indicates the Supreme Personality of Godhead to be original two-handed. Those who deride Krishna as if he were an ordinary person are shown here to be ignorant of his divine nature. If Krishna is like an ordinary human being, then how it is possible for him to show the universal form and again to show the four-handed Narayan form? So it is very clearly stated in Bhagavad Gita that one who thinks that Krishna is an ordinary person and who misguides the reader by claiming that it is the impersonal Brahman within Krishna is speaking is doing the greatest injustice. Krishna has actually shown his universal form and his four-handed Vishnu form. So how can he be an ordinary human being? A pure devotee is not confused by misguided commentaries on Bhagavad Gita because he knows what is what. The original verses of Bhagavad Gita are as clear as the sun. They do not require lamp light from foolish commentators. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Sudurdarsham Idam Rupam Diristavan Asi Yan Mama Deva Api Asya Rupasya Nityam Darshana Kangsinaha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, My dear Arjuna, this form of mine you are now seeing is very difficult to behold. Even the demigods are ever seeking the opportunity to see this form which is so dear. In the 48th verse of this chapter, Lord Krishna concluded, revealing his universal form, and informed Arjuna that this form is not possible to be seen by so many pious activities, sacrifices, etc. Now, here the word Sudurdarsham is used, indicating that Krishna's two-handed form is still more confidential. One may be able to see the universal form of Krishna by adding a little tinge of devotional service to various activities like penances, Vedic study, and philosophical speculation. It may be possible, but without a tinge of bhakti one cannot see. That has already been explained. Still, beyond that universal form, the form of Krishna with two hands is still more difficult to see. Even for demigods like Brahma and Lord Shiva, they desire to see him. And we have evidence in the Srimad Bhagavatam that when he was supposed to be in the womb of his mother, Devaki, all the demigods from heaven came to see the mother of Krishna, and they offered nice prayers to the Lord, although he was not at all time visible to them. They waited to see him. A foolish person may deride him, thinking him an ordinary person, and may offer respect not to him but to the impersonal, something within him. But these are all nonsensical postures. Krishna in his two-armed form is actually desired to be seen by demigods like Brahma and Shiva. In Bhagavad Gita 9:11, it is also confirmed, Avajananti mam mudha manusim tanum avshritam. He is not visible to the foolish persons who deride him. Krishna's body, as confirmed by Brahma Samhita and confirmed by Krishna himself in Bhagavad Gita, is completely spiritual and full of bliss and eternity. His body is never like a material body, but for some who make a study of Krishna by reading Bhagavad Gita or similar Vedic scriptures, Krishna is a problem. For one using a material process, Krishna is considered to be a great historical personality and very learned philosopher, but he is an ordinary man, and even though he was so powerful, he had to accept a material body. Ultimately, they think that the absolute truth is impersonal, therefore they think that from his impersonal feature, he assumed a personal feature attached to material nature. This is materialistic calculation of the Supreme Lord. Another calculation is speculative. Those who are in search of knowledge also speculate on Krishna and consider him to be less important than the universal form of the Supreme. Thus some think that the universal form of Krishna which was manifested to Arjuna is more important than his personal form. According to them, the personal form of the Supreme is something imaginary. They believe that in the ultimate issue, the absolute truth is not a person, but the transcendental process is described in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4. To hear about Krishna from authorities, that is the actual Vedic process, and those who are actually in the Vedic line hear about Krishna from authority, and by repeated hearing about him, Krishna becomes dear. As we have several times discussed, Krishna is covered by his Yogamaya potency. He is not to be seen or revealed to anyone and everyone. Only by one to whom he reveals himself can he be seen. This is confirmed in the Vedic literature. For one who is a surrendered soul, the absolute truth can actually be understood. The transcendentalists, by continuous Krishna consciousness and by devotional service to Krishna, can have his spiritual eyes opened and can see Krishna by a revelation. Such a revelation is not possible even for the demigods. Therefore, it is difficult even for the demigods to understand Krishna, and the advanced demigods are always in hope of seeing Krishna in his two-handed form. The conclusion is that although to see the universal form of Krishna is very, very difficult and not possible for anyone and everyone, it is still more difficult to understand his personal form as Shyam Sundar. Naham vedairna tapassa na danena na chedyaya sakya evam vidho diristum diristavam yatha. The form you are seeing with your transcendental eyes cannot be understood simply by studying the Vedas, nor by undergoing serious penances, nor by charity, nor by worship. It is not by these means that one can see me as I am. Krishna first appeared before his parents Devaki and Vasudha in a four-handed form, and then he transformed himself into the two-handed form. This mystery is very difficult to understand for those who are atheists or who are devoid of devotional service. For scholars who have simply studied Vedic literature by way of grammatical knowledge or mere academic qualifications, Krishna is not possible to understand, nor is he to be understood by persons who officially go to the temple to offer worship. They make their visit, but they cannot understand Krishna as he is. Krishna can be understood only through the path of devotional service, as explained by Krishna himself in next verse. Bhaktya mam ananya sakhya aham evam vidho arjuna gyatum drastum cha tattvena pravestum cha param tapa. My dear Arjuna, only by undivided devotional service can I be understood as I am, standing before you, and can thus be seen directly. Only in this way can you enter into the mysteries of my understanding. Krishna can be understood only by the process of undivided devotional service. He explicitly explains this in this verse so that unauthorized commentators who try to understand Bhagavad Gita by this speculative process will know that they are simply wasting their time. No one can understand Krishna or how he came from parents in a four-handed form and at once changed himself into a two-handed form. These things are very difficult to understand by study of the Vedas or by philosophical speculation. Therefore, it is clearly stated here that no one can see him or enter into understanding of these matters. Those who, however, are very experienced students of Vedic literature can learn about him from the Vedic literature in so many ways. There are so many rules and regulations, and if one at all wants to understand Krishna, he must follow the regulative principles described in the authoritative literature. One can perform penance or accordance with those principles. For example, to undergo serious penances, one may observe fasting on Janmashtami, the day on which Krishna appeared, and on the 2 days of Ekadasi, the 11th day after the new moon and the 11th day after the full moon. As far as charity is concerned, it is plain that charity should be given to the devotees of Krishna who are engaged in his devotional service to spread the Krishna philosophy or Krishna consciousness throughout the world. Krishna consciousness is a benediction to humanity. Lord Chaitanya was appreciated by Rupa Goswami as the most munificent man of charity because love of Krishna, which is very difficult to achieve, was distributed freely by him. So if one gives some amount of his money to persons involved in distributing Krishna consciousness, that charity given to spread Krishna consciousness is the greatest charity in the world. And if one worships as prescribed in the temple. In the temple in India, there are always some statue, usually of Vishnu or Krishna. There is a chance to progress by offering worship and respect to the Supreme Lord, Personality of Godhead. For the beginners in devotional service to the Lord, temple worship is essential, and this is confirmed in the Vedic literature. Svetasvatara Upanishad 6.23. Yasya deve para bhaktir yatha deve tatha guru tasyaita kathitha artha prakasante mahatmana. One who has unflinching devotion for the Supreme Lord and is directed by the spiritual master in whom he has similar unflinching faith can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By revelation, one can understand Krishna by mental speculation. One cannot understand Krishna by mental speculation. For one who does not take personal training under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, it is impossible to even begin to understand Krishna. The word tu is specifically used here to indicate that no other process can be recommended, or can be successful in understanding Krishna. The personal form of Krishna, the two-handed form and the four-handed are described as sudur darsham, very difficult to see. They are completely different from the temporary universal form shown to Arjuna. The four-handed form of Narayana and the two-handed form of Krishna are eternal and transcendental ways. The universal form exhibited to Arjuna is temporary. The words Tvam Anyena Na Drishtva Purvam, verse 47 state that before Arjuna no one had seen that universal form also. That suggests that amongst the devotees there was no necessity of showing it. That form was exhibited by Krishna at the request of Arjuna, so that in the future, when one represents himself as an incarnation of God, people can ask to see his universal form. The word na, used repeatedly in the previous verse, indicates that one should not be very much proud of such credentials as an academic education and Vedic literature. One must take to the devotional service of Krishna. Only then can one attempt to write commentaries on Bhagavad Gita. Krishna changes from the universal form to the four-handed form of Narayan and then to his own natural form of two hands. This indicates that the four-handed forms and other forms mentioned in Vedic literature are all emanations of the original two-handed Krishna. He is the origin of all emanations. Krishna is distinct even from these forms. What to speak of the impersonal conception? As far as the four-handed forms of Krishna are concerned, it is stated clearly that even the most identical four-handed form of Krishna, which is known as Mahavishnu, who is lying on the cosmic ocean and from whose breathing so many innumerable universes are passing out and entering, is also an expansion of the Supreme Lord, as stated in the Brahma Samhita 548. Asyaika nivasate khalam atha valambya jivanti loma vila jagat andanatha Vishnur mahasaya yasya kala visesho govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. The Mahavishnu, into whom all the innumerable universes enter and from whom they come forth again simply by his breathing process, is a plenary expansion of Krishna. Therefore, I worship Govinda, Krishna, the cause of all causes. Therefore, one should conclusively worship the personal form of Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who has eternal bliss and knowledge. He is the source of all forms of Vishnu. He is the source of all forms of incarnation, and he is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. In the Vedic literature, Gopal Tapani Upanishad 1.1, the following statement appears: Sachidananda Rupaya Krishnaya Klista Karine Namo Vedanta Vedyaya Guruve Buddhi Sakshine. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Krishna, who has transcendental form of bliss, eternity and knowledge. I offer my respects to him, because understanding him means understanding the Vedas, and he is therefore the supreme spiritual master. That in it he said, Krishna vai paramam daivatam. Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. Gopal Tapani Upanishad 1.3. Eko vasi sarvagata is Krishna, Sarvaga Krishna Idya, that one Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and He is worshipable. Eko api san bahuda yo vabhati. Krishna is one, but He is manifested in unlimited forms and expanded incarnations. Gopal Tapana Upanishad 1.21. Brahma Samhita 5.1. Ishvara Param Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Nadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karan Karanam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, who has a body of eternity, knowledge and bliss. He has no beginning, for He is the beginning of everything. He is the cause of all causes. Elsewhere it is said, Yatra Vatirinam Krishnakhyam Param Brahma Narakti. The Supreme Absolute Truth is a person. His name is Krishna, and He sometimes descends on this earth. Similarly, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we find a description of all kinds of incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in this list, the name of Krishna also appears. But then it is said that this Krishna is not an incarnation of God, but is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself. Ete chamsaha kala pumsa Krishna is Bhagavan Swayam. Similarly, in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, Matta prarthanam nanyat, there is nothing superior to my form as the personality of Godhead Krishna. He also says elsewhere in Bhagavad Gita, Aham adir hi devanam, I am the origin of all the demigods. And after understanding Bhagavad Gita from Krishna, Arjuna also confirms this in the following words, Param Brahma Pramdhama Pavitram Paramam Bhavam. I now fully understand that you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth, and that you are the refuge in everything. Therefore, the and universal form which Krishna showed to Arjuna is not the original form of God. The original is the Krishna form, the universal form with its thousands and thousands of heads and hands is manifest to draw the attention of those who have no love for God. It is not God's original form. The universal form is not attractive for pure devotees who are in love with the Lord in different transcendental relationships. The Supreme Godhead exchanges transcendental love in His original form of Krishna. Therefore, to Arjuna, who was so intimately related with Krishna in friendship, this form of the universal manifestation was not pleasing. Rather, it was fearful. Arjuna, who was a constant companion of Krishna's, must have had transcendental eyes. He was not an ordinary man. Therefore, he was not captivated by the universal form. This form may seem wonderful to persons who are involved in elevating themselves by fruitive activities, but to persons who are engaged in devotional service, the two-handed form of Krishna is the most dear. Hare Krishna.